You are listening to the Novel Writing Podcast, episode 213. I'm your host, Colleen Mitchell. Grab a cup, cozy up, and let's get to writing. Today I'm talking with Becca Syme, success coach for writers and creators. She is a Gallup certified strengths coach who has helped over 6,000 individual clients through her Write Better Faster and Strengths for Writers classes and cohorts. Becca hosts the QuitCast podcast and has written several Dear Writer style books, including Dear Writer, You Need to Quit, which I loved, Dear Writer, You're Doing It Wrong, Dear Writer, You're Doing It Right, and Dear Writer, Are You in Writer's Block, among others. I have been following Becca since early 2024 when I started watching replays from the old 20 books to 50K conferences and quickly found that she was speaking my language. So, Becca, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I love hearing the she was speaking my language thing because I do feel like once you latch on to that and it resonates, it's like it's the right fit. So
Yeah,
I'm excited for that.
yeah. And there were several things you said in those replays that we're going to touch on. But
Oh,
yeah,
good.
it was awesome. What else should listeners know about you and how you became an expert in helping writers write better and faster?
Yeah, I was a novelist before I started doing this. I mean, I feel like I've been a novelist most of my adult life just because I was a little bit obsessed with writing, as I'm sure a lot of us were. And then alongside that, because I wasn't making money at it, like I wasn't doing it professionally until 2010, but alongside that, I had this career of trying to understand how we can individually be better aligned with our own, like what's the best outcome option for me in any particular situation. I got a little obsessed with understanding that. So when it came time to help some of my friends who were writers as well with some things that they had been struggling with, I just kind of had this ready skill because I had been doing this strength stuff for, I don't know, 12 years, I think, when I started using it with writers. So the handy part about that is I have a huge volume of experience in doing this. So it is pretty easy for me to help people on an individual basis. And then the books and stuff are sort of like, here's what I can tell you is true across the board, but there's very little that's true across the board. The majority of stuff is, well, that might work for some people, but it won't work for these people. And that might be true for some people, but it won't be true for these people. So almost everything in this industry is contextualized for like whether it works for you or not.
So, what are the Gallup strengths for people who don't know, and why should writers know what their top five are?
Yeah, there was a academic in like 1950s. It was very early in the positive psychology movement who was noticing that when people were successful at something, they were like extremely successful at it. And you'd have this huge gap between like the people who were kind of average at it and then people who were just like out of bounds successful. And he started studying it, trying to understand why this would happen. And he created an experiment to see if he could close the gap between like people who are sort of average at something and who are above average by making them be taught by someone who is really excellent. And what he found actually was that the people who were naturally more talented at something or who had more intact skill chains would get better faster at it. And the people who were average would still get better, but they wouldn't get better at this exponential rate. And so then it became, well, how do we figure out where those exponential growth capacity places are? How do we figure out how to identify them? And so they set about this like decade long, research of how do we create a metric of understanding it. And what we all get decades later is the benefit of something that was so thoroughly and well done that it has a huge amount of veracity in terms of like the test itself is the most accurate test that I've ever worked with. And the thing I like the most about it, first of all, that it's accurate. So I know that when I get the results, it's a pretty good chance that I can trust the results I've gotten. But the other part is the extreme growth capacity in people is often both against us and for us. So, like, yes, like one of my top strengths is input. There's 34 strengths, and one of my top strengths is input. And yes, I am extremely excellent at researching and finding links and going down rabbit holes. And then that means I'm also extremely talented at procrastinating because I'm so good at doing those things that I end up doing them because they're so fun and I can be so good at them when I should probably be doing other things. So then understanding that that innate capacity needs guardrails and it needs to be sort of disciplined on some level and worked out in order to be at its peak effectiveness because it can work against me as well as working for me. And I think that's one of the reasons that I like to have writers know their strengths because there are some things that you will struggle with in your writing career that will feel like, but everybody else does it this way, so I have to do it this way. When actually, in reality, there's so many patterns to what success might look like, and that you just fall outside the pattern that we see commonly, but you could still be really successful at something. You just may not know what that is. And so I find it really helpful to have the language about it and kind of be able to show people like, oh no, you're wired like a bread machine. You have these strengths. That means you don't need to write every day. And in fact, trying to write every day is going to derail your process and you should stop trying to do that. And instead focus on creating a good environment for the bread machine to work effectively. So just knowing things like that is really beneficial for us, I think.
I'm just laughing because it's bread machine. I haven't thought
Yeah.
about a bread machine in years.
Yeah. I unfortunately still have one, so I think about it all the time.
I don't know about unfortunate.
Oh, I should not be eating that much bread, but it's just so good.
So I think another thing that people may not know is you just said there's 34 strengths, but that also means that your chance of having the same strengths profile, whether it's the first five in the same order or all 34, is like astronomically low to compare to somebody
Yeah.
else.
Yep. Yeah, it's like one in 378,000 is the top five, and then one in 6.5 billion, I think, or 6 billion, 6.5 billion is the full 34 in the same order, the same percentages. So like you're so unique, like so unique. Your brain is so different. And yet there are some patterns that we can know because the 34 are very like the boundaries between the strengths are very visible if you know enough about them to watch for them. So yeah, there are things that I can learn from somebody else who's high input, but I'm probably not going to find my exact brain in anyone who's around me in any proximity.
Which is great because what you do, nobody else can do.
Yeah, that's 100% true. It really is like this thing everybody tells us all the time of like, do the thing that only you can do. And people are like, how different can I be? And I'm like, would you like the math? Because I have it. And that's only talking about strengths. Like if you take into consideration your top five order, plus things like there are other personality metrics that just measure different things. No one personality metric measures everything. Everything only measures what it measures. So you might be, and they are not related to each other, by the way. So, like, you may have a completely different MBTI type and DISC type and Enneagram type, not to mention your gender and your, age and your culture and your ethnic background and all these other things that might be different about you. So, yeah, you're unique in to a huge extent. Your brain is unique. So your unique perspective does actually make a difference. It is very different from other people.
So I mentioned this in the email I sent to you, but I've taken the Gallup Strengths twice, and I got different results, very
Hmm.
slightly different results. They were separated by about 3 years. So my first one in 2018 was discipline, futuristic, intellection, individualization, and strategic, and then 2021 was discipline, strategic, focus, intellection, and relator. So
Mm.
can you talk about why that might have changed and if people want to take this multiple times across different years?
Yeah, I usually encourage people not to take it again, not because it can't be relevant, but because for a lot of people, focusing on where you are the most instinctively naturally talented rather than so what happens with a lot of people. And I don't know if this necessarily happens with everybody, but I see it a lot where people are like, those aren't my strengths. And then they retake the test, sort of trying to get other strengths. That's kind of one version of let's take it again. Another version of let's take it again is you took it the first time when you were under 28, and then when you took it again, like your brain was just more solidified than it was when you were younger, especially people who take it when they're under 18. Another version is you take the test when you're at a company and you're instinctively taking the test to try to get certain things that you know your company will reward. And then that becomes a little bit harder because thankfully most companies don't do a lot of teaching around strength. So most people will they'll have taken the test, but they didn't do a lot of learning. And when they take the test the second time, they haven't learned anything about strengths, right? They're just taking it again for the second time. And then I will sometimes see a more accurate result the second time. But most of the time, what happens is people will take the test, then do a lot of learning about strengths. And then when they take the test the second time, that information is now swimming around in their head. So they might hear a phrase that when they took it the first time wouldn't have resonated. But now that they've done more learning, they're like, oh, I always thought that I had higher empathy. And so maybe this time I'm on the lookout subconsciously for empathy statements. And it's not that it makes the results completely wrong, it's that it changes the results just enough that I don't know that it's worth having people retake it. Because what happens when you have, let me put it this way. In the reader speeds example, right, where we talk about the experiment that was done, the two classes that took the same speed reading from the same teacher, the average group went from 90 words to 150 words a minute, and the above average group started off at 350 and went to 3,000 words a minute. So, yeah, so the difference is staggering when you have a natural talent for something and then you multiply it by resources, time, intention, good teachers, access, right? Like there are all kinds of things that can create leaps forward in learning. But when you do actually have a natural capacity for something that is lower and is more average, focusing too much time on that thing is not going to yield the same level of result that focusing on a higher capacity would yield. So when I'm talking about are the results, the first results the most accurate? If you're under 28 when you took it, probably not. If you were at a job where you were trying not to be yourself and you were trying to fit into a corporate culture, I would probably do a coaching session with somebody where I looked at both tests and I listened to them talk. And then we validated the test based on what I hear. Because it's strengths are a language that people just speak that I can hear when they're talking. But I would want to do as much as I could to invalidate the first results rather than to validate the second ones because you didn't know anything about strengths when you took the test the first time. And that's when you're the most likely to test as you actually are, unless one of those other two things, right? Like under 28 or at a job where you're trying not to be yourself.
Well, I was under 28 for the first one. I don't
Yeah.
remember why I took it, but the second one, I was 28 and it was for my career coach. So we were trying to figure out like a good fit for a job.
Oh, interesting. So in that case, I would probably take your top five. So if you've ever taken the test, you get a report from Gallup about your top five or your full 34. And the first 5 pages of strengths, not the list, obviously, but like when they actually get into the strengths, those pages are individualized to you based on your full workup. And so I would go through those two results with those two reports and I would highlight everything that's you on both of them and then see which one feels more accurate to who you are because the holistic test results are probably going to feel more accurate on the one that's really you versus the one that's not.
And I like that you mentioned how it's easier to excel faster with your strengths than it is with things you're not as good at. Because I think what I took away from taking this test is once you have those top five things to focus on, don't focus too much or as much or at all on those weaknesses, quote unquote weaknesses, because it's weakness for you, it might not be for somebody else. Because doing that will take away from the time that you could spend just like blasting through the roof with those five skills.
Yes, 100%. And the strength itself, right? we think about something like strategic is a great example since you tested as high strategic. I have that as well. Strategic is I want to find the best pathway right forward. So I do a lot of anticipating what might be coming and then trying to find whatever the best thing is. And best is a big word for strategics because best might be something that I don't understand is like it has an equal sign, and I don't necessarily understand what's on the other side of the equal sign until it's revealed. So, like, best might be most efficient for me, but actually, efficiency might not be the objective best thing for me in that moment. It's just something that I've come to value, especially if you have high discipline. Efficiency is a big word for disciplined people as well. So what happens with strategic is that I will latch on to efficiency as best, and then all things bow to efficiency in strategic, right? Like if there's a way that I could become more efficient, I will. But there's a way to out efficiency your most effective work as well, from a perspective of like, could I do it better if I let it happen slower? Could I do it better if I let myself struggle a little bit? That kind of thing, right? And what people don't realize is that I don't always get to decide what's on the other side of best in my equal sign in my head. So it's worth doing some exploration of that because strategic can either make me the most efficient, most effective worker in an office, or it can make me absolutely freeze and not move forward and not be able to do anything because the best path that I saw, that was the most efficient path that I saw, is now closed to me. And because I thought that was the way to go, I'm having trouble adapting because now my best path has been taken away. And so now I'm totally frozen. So one version of strategic is extremely productive, and the other version of strategic looks lazy and tired and immobile because it's the same strength, but in different situations, the strength is kind of tagged in a different way, right? It's triggered in a different way. So knowing that about myself is that's also the helpful part, I think, of understanding your strengths is they're the source of your greatest strengths and your greatest weaknesses at the same time.
Super powerful.
Yeah.
So because all of these, it's because everybody is going to have basically a 100% unique strengths profile. Let's just say that. Can you give some examples of how people with vastly different strengths, at least the top five, can effectively achieve their writing goals?
Yeah, so there's a strength that's really common with writers called intellection. And I just have to say, if you don't have intellection, it's okay. It's just because it's common doesn't mean it should be present. It just means that statistically it's more likely that people who are writers will have intellection than not. That's not a relevant prescriptive statistic. It's just descriptive. Anyway, I say that because what I'm about to say will drive some people nuts, but it will be the best work often for intellection people, which is that you can't force yourself to write all the time. You have to allow your brain to have some fallow time, and not just time where you're letting yourself think about the book, quote unquote, but where you're actually not thinking about anything intentionally. You're just letting yourself have a rest. You're letting yourself have fallow time. And that's when that bread machine of intellection is cooking other stuff, right? It's like helping you process, taking other ideas or research that you might have done and kind of grabbing those and putting them in the back of your brain and letting you have the most productive interior time thinking over and over and over something. But for people who are, let's say, like really high achiever, low intellection, that sounds like torture to them because, yeah, so not writing for several days in a row will make an achiever just want to pull their hair out. And so their best work might be attending the manuscript and work. Whereas somebody who's really dominant in intellection might take 3 or 4 weeks off and not write at all, and then feel like, oh, now I'm ready and now I can latch on to that. And then I'm going to go do that. Both of those people are technically acting according to their best work, like their best strengths profile work, especially if you have intellection and then a lot of other thinking strengths. That's often the way that that goes. But it would drive somebody else up the wall and wouldn't be their best process at all. So this is why I say like you almost can't listen sometimes to what other people say because if you don't know for sure that that is a helpful strategy for the way that your brain is wired, your intuition alone might be enough to just be like, "Oh, that's not for me. That's not for me."
It's so funny. I'm laughing this whole time because I don't. So Achiever is not in my top five. Intellection is, but I'm getting the sense that maybe Achiever is number six because the idea of just letting it sit for 2, 3 weeks is like, oh no,
Well,
can't do
and you
it.
have high discipline
I
too,
do.
right?
Yeah.
Yep. So discipline is the momentum strength, the
Mhm.
momentum activity. So with discipline, because you will be static as well in momentum. So like if I stop working, then I'm more likely to stay stopped. So if I start working, I'm more likely to stay started or to continue working. So the momentum of the work actually produces forward motion for discipline. So if I stop, then I will probably be stopped for a long, long time. So a lot of discipline people need to kind of keep themselves moving forward until they plan to take time off, right? Because when discipline is the make a plan, execute a plan strength, right? So yeah, for discipline, that might be very similar to the achiever profile where you may not want to take a bunch of time off unless you're in between books, and then you take time off to kind of let the fallow happen. But you might write every day or every work day as a disciplined person because you just are keeping the momentum alive, right?
I like that. Makes me feel better.
Oh, good.
So, are there any common struggles you see in writers despite their strengths profile?
Ooh, no. No, almost everything is common because of a personality trait. In terms of like, so like my first response thought was, yes, a lack of security about how they're wired. But then even then I would say unless you have certain strengths, like there's a couple of strengths that are just like, well, I don't care what you say. I am how I am because I am that way. And you can, I don't care what you think. That is also a personality trait. It's not something that is natural to people in terms of like, it's not natural to all people. It's definitely a personality trait. But even that, like, but the most common thing I would say is definitely a lack of security or trust in the fact that they can just listen to their intuition and that it's okay to trust themselves and it's okay to do the thing just because you think you should be doing it or not do the thing just because you think it's not a good fit for you. That is definitely a commonality between a good portion of writers, just that lack of confidence in their own decisions.
I think it's really important for us to recognize that because it's so easy to latch onto a specific piece of advice or a specific influencer or expert and be like, I have to do the way I have to do it the way that they say. Like Stephen
Yep.
King did it this way, so therefore I have to if I want to be successful. And I'm like, no, take what works
Yep.
and leave the rest.
Yeah, if that one sentence, like take what works and leave the rest, if that one sentence could just be in everybody's head, like I saw this really great talk once where Robert Dugoni is a thriller writer and he was talking at a conference once and he said there is no universal truth in writing, like there is no one rule that works for everything. And he said, I really believed that was true until I met this one woman. And I'm like, oh no, he's going to say some stupid thing that's not true. And then everybody's going to walk away being like, oh, I don't do that thing. And I was so glad that I stayed in the workshop because the story that he told was essentially this woman being like, well, but there is one rule. It's that if it works, do it. And I was like, yeah, I want to get that tattooed on my body somewhere. Like, if it works, do it is the only universal rule in writing at all.
So good. Works,
Yeah.
do it. And if it doesn't, don't do it.
Don't do it. Yeah. Don't make it harder than it has to be.
Yeah. Earlier, you mentioned skill chains, and I want to talk about skill chains. So I learned about those from one of the recordings from 20 books. So for people who don't know what a skill chain is, what is it, and how can we build them?
So there are the good news is in your strengths, you have highly intact skill chains. And so in the areas where you're the most talented, you already have them. And that's the handy part, right? It's like you have at least some intact skill chains that are just going to run for you all the time. So in the let's say the execution of a particular skill that we would choose that we want to do, it's never just that one skill that is the thing that you practice. So, like in piano, there are people who can sit down and play the piano from jump. Like they don't have any official training. They didn't really teach themselves anything. They just have the ability to sit down and play. They don't have practice in the skill of playing the piano, but they do have other skills that are requisite skills that you need to have in order to do those things. So it might be that they learned how to move melody in music because they listen to a lot of music and they have a natural ability to tell melody movement and then to be able to replicate melody movement. So most people would have to learn that by learning notes on the piano and then playing notes and having a teacher teach them hand position. You know what I mean? Like there are all these skills that other people would need to learn that kind of balance on top of each other and hook into each other and make the chain itself be weight bearing in order to get to the point where you could play Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. But if you have other versions of a skill that would sub in for that. Like, again, the ability to determine melody and movement in notes, the ability to replicate a melody that you haven't played before by just understanding the ratios between music notes and stuff like that. There are ways that you could produce that skill by just having other skills that are dependent. But when we try to learn something, I think a lot of us sit down and we hear like, we'll just run ads or just make creatives or just read the spreadsheet or something like that, right? And
Just
it's like,
do it.
well, yeah, just do it is like the worst. It's the worst sentence ever. Because if you don't have a particular skill in the chain that is holding all of that other person's skills together, then you're always going to stop being able to work wherever that skill is missing. So if you don't have the ability, for instance, to pattern read, like you're not a good pattern reader, then looking at sets of numbers in a spreadsheet is going to be so difficult for you, and to a point where it would be better to just look at the number in your Amazon account and determine whether you made money by is it higher than it was, right? On some level, that is a better use of your time, unless you have a sub in that you could do for those numbers. But then you have to have somebody who's willing to sit with you and talk about it and listen to why you can't use spreadsheets and listen for the, like, etc. And most people just don't have the patience to do that. So for me, when I think about skill chains, I think about someone has told you to just do this thing, and no matter how hard you try, you can't replicate it. There's probably a skill missing somewhere in that dependent chain of skill that the other person has because they have a natural ability to do it and they didn't have to sit in a classroom and learn it. So they can pattern read because they're high strategic or they're high context or they're high analytical. And they just have the ability to put numbers together in a way that makes contextual sense that you may not have. So you're trying to replicate this behavior that they just keep telling you, just do it, and you don't know how to do it. Then you have a skill that's missing somewhere. You could try to assess where the skill is if you could talk to somebody who knows ads well enough to like figure out what are you missing. But the chances are pretty good that what we're going to find is that it's not a actual skill. Let's say reading the spreadsheets is not an actual skill you need to do in order to run ads, because you could make an intuitive decision that works for you, right? That makes you feel like you're spending your money effectively and you're making the most efficient choice that you can. Because all you want to do is just be able to quickly look at numbers and then make a decision. You don't want to have to pore over sheets. it might be more efficient for the person who's capable of poring over sheets to make a better decision, but that may not be what you do. That may not be the best use of your time. Learning how to read spreadsheets may not be a good skill for you to acquire. But unfortunately, what happens is, especially in courses in the author community, a lot of teachers will use the just and should language, like you should be able to do this, you should just do it this way, when you are missing a skill that they have that they're blind to. They usually are totally unaware that they have it. They think everyone can do this, or that if you were smart, you'd be able to do it, or if you wanted it bad enough, you'd be able to do it. But the reality is that there are just some skills that you can't have unless you learn them. So again, you could try to identify the skill and learn it, but it might be really expensive and it might be very time consuming and it might not be worth it. I would so much rather see people do the thing that feels right for them and find a way to get better at that thing that they're doing rather than trying to copy somebody else's system. Because the likelihood, if you're struggling that much with adjusting, you probably don't have the same skills that person has.
Is there a relationship between enjoying something and having the skill chain in it? Like
It
I'm thinking
definitely,
because I'm
mhm,
thinking about the whole spreadsheet example. I love spreadsheets. I love spreadsheets.
yeah.
I love my finances. I love like I could spend hours just looking at my budgeting software. So like I love that. But does that mean I have the high skill chain in it?
Yeah, probably.
Okay.
Yeah, more likely than not, if you love something, it usually means you're talented at it, or it's easier for you, or you can make gains more quickly as well. Because that's part of why we start to love things when we're younger, is like, oh, I realize I can become a better writer really easily, whereas like other people around me can't become a better writer as quickly as I can. They can't learn those skills as fast. Or like piano, I use piano a lot because it's such a common thing that people learn, right? Like you take one kid who doesn't like piano and one kid who likes piano, and you come back to them in 40 years, and one of them's still going to be playing and the other one isn't. One of them is going to be significantly better than they were at 8, and one of them will not be any better, right? And the differentiator is so often, I actually enjoy doing this, which is why I just want people to find the thing that they enjoy about being an author and then do more of that and less of the other stuff. Because even if it is, I only enjoy the writing and I don't enjoy any of the marketing, great. Let's at least write a bunch of books. And then we can figure out one thing with marketing that you can do that you like better than you hate everything else. And then that can be the one thing that you get really good at, right? Like don't do stuff that you hate just because other people did it and had success with it. That's not predictive.
It took me
Yeah.
far too long to accept the fact that I hate social media enough that I'm just not going to do it.
Yeah, it's not necessary to be successful. Like, I know
Exactly.
people say that it is because they have an invested interest in saying that it is. It's either validating their experience or it's validating a belief that they have about other people. But it's not actually true that you have to have a social media presence in order to be a successful writer. Like, that is something that I know a lot of people would be more comfortable if that was the universal rule. Well, you can't be a successful writer if you're not on social media. And I'm like, oh, I have so many clients who are just not into social media. So they become good at other things. They become great at advertising. They become great at newsletters. They become great at local events. They become great at writing books, frankly. And then they release books. There are so many people who don't even have to run ads when they release books because they have dialed in how to write those books so effectively that Amazon knows exactly who to sell their books to. There's no question. So, like, yes, on some level, you're going to hear everyone has to do, but there just is no such thing as the thing everyone has to do. It doesn't exist.
Except taking what works and leaving the rest.
Yes, like if it works, do it, right? Like that's the
Yeah.
one rule. I'm gonna have to write him a letter and be like, you, sir, are still paying off in advice after all these years. Good work. You're the only one.
The only one.
Yeah.
I think the conversation about doing what you like to do leads really nicely into the next question that I had. So you had a really great analogy at Author Nation about putting your mill on a river. And side note, I was thrilled that it was from Skyrim that because I'm very much
Yeah.
into Skyrim. So I was like, yes, I know that reference.
Yes.
Um,
Did you know the river in particular, the Lake
I
River
didn't.
thing?
No,
Yeah,
no,
I
but I was like,
I
oh, that's
haven't
very
played it enough
Skyrim-y.
to know, but yeah.
I have like 600 hours.
Oh, nice.
Trying
I
to
love
not do it
that.
right now.
Oh,
Yeah.
I feel
I
that.
have to write books.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Anyway, during that talk, what I wrote in my notebook was don't pin happiness on metrics or hopes for a future feeling. What are ways for creatives to practice feeling happiness right now without needing to have your book published?
Yes, that is such a good question because we have to talk about the thing that we can control, right? So it's okay for me to hope that something will happen in the future. It's absolutely okay for me to be like, oh, I would love it if this would happen. I would love it if this would happen. We just have to be cautious to also love things that are happening in the moment, like as we are doing them. Because if the only thing that we're doing is pinning absolutely everything of our happiness on something that may or may not happen in the future, we have no agency in that. And then that is a losing game. Because at some point, if it doesn't happen exactly the way you think it should happen, you're going to want to stop because there is no way to control. And especially as like the world becomes less secure and stable, the online communities become less secure and stable because we've got to go through the molting, right, of like whatever it is that's coming. Because there's going to be some changes in almost every arena of life, and we've got to go through that. But we want to still maintain our ability to love what we do and to enjoy writing and to continue to try making money at this thing that we love doing, which means that I have to enjoy something about the process, whether it's the writing or my spreadsheets and numbers or my community and my conventions or my workshops that I do or the books that I read or the characters or the worlds that I build or whatever it is. But there has to be something that we like doing. And then we have to practice feeling the feeling of peace and security, which often comes from feeling the four main positive emotions in the positive emotion cycle, right? It's I feel happy that, I feel grateful that, I feel hopeful that, I feel secure that. So if I'm writing, which I'm going to when we finish with this, I it's my I night writing time, so I get to go write. So I'm like, oh, I've been so excited to write this particular part of this mystery that I'm working on. And I just had an idea for it at lunch today. So now I'm anticipating how exciting it's going to be for me to sit down and write. So I'm feeling hopeful about that writing time. And if the only, but that's today, right? Like I'm feeling hopeful about this time that's going to happen an hour from now. It's different if the hopefulness is going to be 6 years down the road or some nebulous time in the future when all the stars align. Nope. I've got to find the thing so that I can practice feeling the feeling today. Because what they don't tell you, which I think is unfortunate, and by they, I don't know who I mean by they, but it is kind of just a nebulous they. But what they don't tell you is that if you wait to feel all of your satisfaction until something else happens in the future, you will never feel it when that thing happens because you won't know how to make yourself feel that thing. So if you don't practice feeling grateful and hopeful and happy and secure in the moment, you're not going to be able to feel happy when you finally make money because you don't realize it. Maybe not you in particular, because I do think that there are some personalities of people who are better at understanding this dynamic than other people, and disciplines are usually pretty good at this. But if I don't practice feeling a thing, I can't feel it. It's just like having a muscle that I'm working out. Like the downside of being older, so I'm over 45 now, I'm closer to 50 than 40. The downside of being older is that I don't have the capacity musculature wise that I used to have. Like I used to be an athlete in high school. I was a golfer. I was a volleyball player, basketball player. So I tried to play basketball and it did not go well because in my brain, in my brain, I'm like, oh, this was fun. I used to love playing basketball. So this will be a blast for me to like get back on the basketball court. And I bought a basketball. I live not too far from a basketball court. I'm like, this is going to be amazing. It was awful because my muscles didn't remember how to do it. But I had this assumption that I used to love basketball so much. If I could just get back on a basketball court, I would feel that way again. But what was actually happening in my head is that I was having a fantasy and I didn't realize it, right? So I couldn't make a shot. I couldn't dribble. My knee hurt when I would pivot, and that didn't used to happen. But my arms are out of shape, my shoulders are out of shape, right? So like I couldn't do some of the things I used to be able to do. I still had the memory of it, so like I could still get postures correct and I could still, when I was closer, I could hit layups and stuff like that. But like I couldn't hit free throws anymore. I couldn't hit three pointers. It took me so much time to get that practice back. But if I had been playing every day since I was in high school, I wouldn't hit 47 and then struggle to play basketball because I would have been practicing all the time. And then it would have been easier for me when I stepped on the court. And I think a lot of people assume that feeling secure and happy because of something that you did is a natural state, but it is a practiced state, especially if you want it to last a long period of time. If you don't, it'll be like eating a cookie where you have a sugar high for 30 seconds and then you crash again because you can't make yourself feel that feeling. So you really do have to practice feeling joyful about what you do as a writer and feeling peaceful about something in your career and feeling secure about something, feeling like you're talented at something. You have to practice feeling all those things if you want to feel them. And I can tell you this, there are some people in the world, because I know them personally, who have had Netflix deals and hit number one New York Times and have made multiple millions of dollars and did not like it because it didn't feel the way they thought that it would feel. It didn't bring them what they thought it would bring them. It may have been great, and most of them in the world, people who've hit those milestones, would probably at least say from stage that it felt great, but it doesn't last unless you practice it lasting. So the reason for the mill, right, was we can't ignore the fact that reality is reality. So you can't just have a mill on a lake. It's not going to move. You've got to put the mill on the river, which means that it has to consistently produce.
Yeah. I did have that experience when I published my first book. I was like, okay, this feels amazing. It's like super high, and then a day later, I'm like, okay, got to work on the next one.
Yeah.
It was really
Yeah.
cool to see it on my desk and, have the proof copies and all of that, but got to work on the next one.
Yeah, it doesn't last, right? Unless you can make the joy last by you generating it.
Yeah.
And some of that might be reminding yourself, like even sometimes just in memories, like I published 67 fiction books, I think, 68 fiction books in
Nice.
my career, either had published or published. And I can think of specific ones of them where I did something great or I wrote with a co-writer, so like we did something great together, right? And I can think of those things and I can still feel that feeling. But it's partly because in my 20s, I practiced feeling all of my positive emotions so consistently that I can feel it almost like I'm feeling it for the first time again. But it's because I have so much practice of feeling those feelings. And it does calm down some of the other feelings that I feel, especially insecurity and stuff like that. It's like, no, I really did these things. It really lasts longer. But if I don't practice feeling those feelings, it's not going to change the state that I'm in, right? It's not going to change how secure I feel in my life. Like I've got to practice feeling positive things.
Probably not what writers want to hear,
No, no.
but it is the most useful thing.
Yeah.
So, is there anything else that you wanted to talk about that we didn't cover?
Yeah, I would probably say I would just double down on that joy part, right? On the like feeling positive feelings, because in this industry, I think it was Rachel Kane that said, anything, if you're in this industry long enough, anything that can happen to you will happen to you. And so the sort of longevity of that perspective to me is there's going to be a lot of stuff that will happen, a lot of ups and a lot of downs. And I have to have something that is consistent among all of those ups and all of those downs. Because if I don't know that I will have a happy look back, right? Like a happy hindsight look back. I want to be glad for what I've done in my life. And so being able to find something that I enjoy about writing or about the job or the craft or even just art in general on a really consistent basis. I think so many of us are waiting for something to happen to us in the future, for us to feel things. And I just want us to feel more joy and more peace and more security in the present moment as often as possible.
And it'll probably help temper when Amazon deletes your account
Does
or
its thing.
when Meta
Yeah.
decides that your ads aren't going to work.
Mm-hmm. Yep. 100%. And just knowing that you can weather any of that stuff,
Exactly.
that like Claire Taylor says a lot, there are no life and death emergencies in publishing. So we have to sort of remind ourselves that like anything that happens in publishing, you can recover from. Anything that happens, you can come back from. You can start over if you have to. You can readjust or pivot. Like you have so many decades of career in front of you. And no matter how old you are, you have so many years of career in front of you, and it's not worth treating anything too preciously. We want to make sure that we stay as resilient as possible with as long term of a mindset as possible. And this was from one of the talks I did at 20 Books as well, that the thing that is the most important in the game of author life is the fact that I still want to write. So that's the king in the chess game, right? The most important piece on the chessboard is the king. So we want to protect that at all times. I need to love doing this still when I'm at the end of my career. So that means I have to protect it and make sure that I keep having joy and keep doing things I like and keep experiencing happiness and gratitude for my writing as well.
Well, you are full of all sorts of amazing wisdom.
Thank you.
For if people would like to learn how to work with you, reach out to you, what is the best way to connect with you online?
Betterfasteracademy.com/links is the best spot. It always has all the up to date, like what's going on. If there's a class open, there's a link there. If there's a special that we're running somewhere, there's a link there. And then just in general, probably to follow the Quitcast on either YouTube or Spotify.
Awesome. I have really enjoyed talking with you today.
Yeah, it's been great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. All right, everybody, that is it for today's episode. Thanks for joining us, and remember, the first draft is supposed to be garbage. The Novel Writing Podcast is a production of Colleen Mitchell Writes. For more writing resources, including Curios, Tally Inc. author services, and the 60-day novel writing challenge, check out the links in the description.